You've probably heard the name Aron Ralston, right? His story is, well, it's intense, but it's also a perfect window into one of the biggest questions we can ask about what it means to be human.
Okay, so picture this, a totally remote canyon out in Utah. Ralston's out there climbing, completely by himself. And get this, he hadn't told a soul where he was going. I mean, truly, completely off the grid.
Then, out of nowhere, this massive boulder comes loose. It sends him falling down this super narrow crack in the rock. And bam, it crushes his right arm, pinning him. He's stuck, can't move an inch against that cold canyon wall.
And he's trapped like that for 5 agonizing days. No food, his water runs out, hope is just draining away, to the point where he actually starts recording his last goodbyes to his family.
But then, something shifts. He has this incredibly vivid vision of a child, a son he doesn't have yet, and that sparks this just overwhelming will to live. So he does what seems absolutely impossible. He breaks his own arm, on purpose, both bones. And then, with a dull little pocket knife, he saws through his own flesh to get free.
I mean, what kind of force is powerful enough to make someone do that? That's exactly what we're going to dig into. We're talking about the science of motivation, what gets us up and going, and what it tells us about who we really are deep down.
So to really get a handle on this, psychologists don't just have one answer. They look at it through a few different, let's call them lenses. And when you start to put all these different views together, you get a really clear picture of what's actually driving us.
All right, first things first, let's get a definition on the table. What even is motivation? Well, at its core, it's just a need or a desire that gives you energy and points you in a certain direction. Simple, right? It could be the desire to get up and make dinner, or, the need to amputate your own arm.
Okay, lens number 1 takes us way back, into our evolutionary past. For a while, the big idea was that we're just driven by instincts. These complex behaviors that we don't have to learn. They're just built in for a whole species.
Now, we're a bit more complicated than that, obviously, but real instincts are definitely a thing. I mean, think about it. A dog gets wet, it just shakes, right? Nobody teaches it that. Or how salmon swim all the way back to the exact stream they were born in. Even a human baby, moments after birth, knows how to nurse. It's totally hardwired.
But, okay, instinct doesn't explain everything. Like, why do you crave a slice of pizza? That's not exactly instinct. For that, we need our next lens, drive reduction theory. The idea here is pretty simple. Your body has a need, like for food. That need creates this uncomfortable, agitated feeling. That's the drive. And that drive pushes you to do something to satisfy the need, to get back to a state of balance. Scientists have a cool word for that balance, homeostasis.
So you can think of it like this. There are 2 things happening at once. You've got the internal push and the external pull. That growling in your stomach, that's the push. But then you walk past a food truck and smell a fresh burrito. That's the pull. It's an incentive. The push and the pull work together to get you in that line.
Okay, but wait a second. What about things that don't seem to fit? Like, why do we watch scary movies? That's increasing stress, not reducing it. Or why do you eat dessert when you're already full? Drive reduction theory kind of falls apart there. And that brings us to lens number 3, optimal arousal theory. This one says we're not always trying to be calm, we're trying to find the perfect level of excitement.
You know this feeling, for sure. You've been stuck inside studying all weekend. You feel bored, restless, you need to go do something. You're seeking more arousal. On the flip side, maybe you're singing karaoke and the crowd is going wild and it's all getting a little intense. You're over-aroused and you need to chill out. We're all just constantly trying to dial it into that just right zone. And that sweet spot is different for everyone.
All right, our last lens is probably the one you've heard of. It's from the legendary psychologist Abraham Maslow, and it's his famous hierarchy of needs. He basically said, look, not all needs are created equal. Our motivations are stacked in a pyramid, and we have to take care of the bottom levels first.
The basic idea is super intuitive, right? You're not going to be worried about writing the next great novel if you're starving or don't have a safe place to sleep. You have to build the foundation before you can get to the top of the pyramid, what he called self-actualization. Now, it's not quite as rigid as a ladder. We now know people can work on different levels at once, and culture can change the order. But that core idea, it still holds up. Our most basic survival needs are always going to be the loudest.
So we've got these 4 different ways of looking at motivation. But no matter which theory you prefer, most psychologists agree that when you boil it all down, there are a few core drivers that are behind almost everything we do.
You can think of them as the big three: sex, hunger, and the need to belong. It's pretty straightforward. Sex, that's about making sure the human species survives. Hunger, that's about making sure you survive as an individual. And that need to belong, that's all about our survival as a social group, as a tribe.
And if you want to see just how ridiculously powerful one of these drivers can be, we have to talk about this incredible and kind of intense study from World War II. It's called the Minnesota Hunger Experiment, and it really shows you the shocking power of hunger.
So here's how it worked. Researchers took 36 healthy guys who volunteered. It was an alternative to fighting in the war. For the first 3 months, they just ate normally. Then came the tough part. For 6 straight months, their daily calories were slashed in half. And then they were slowly brought back to health. The whole point was to understand what was happening to people starving in Europe at the time. And the results were, wow, just staggering. I mean, physically, yeah, the guys got super thin and had no energy, but the changes in their minds were what was really shocking. They became completely obsessed with food. They'd dream about it, they'd read cookbooks for fun. All their other drives, just gone. They lost interest in sex, in hanging out with each other. It shows you that when one of those fundamental needs isn't met, the others, like the need to belong, can just completely fall apart.
Okay, so let's circle all the way back to where we started. Back to Aron Ralston trapped in that canyon. Now that we have all these tools, these different lenses, his unbelievable story actually starts to make a whole lot of scientific sense.
What happened to him was like a perfect storm of motivation. You had that intense push from drive reduction. His body was literally screaming for water and food. You had the powerful pull of the need to belong. That vision of his future son was all about connection and family. And then there's optimal arousal. As an adrenaline junkie, his tolerance for stress was already sky high, which let him handle a situation that would have completely overwhelmed most of us.
Look, Aron Ralston's story is about as extreme as it gets, but the crazy thing is, these exact same forces are working on us all day, every day. They're pushing us and pulling us, guiding our choices in ways we don't even realize half the time. So the real question I want to leave you with is, what about you? If you really stop and look at your own life, what forces are shaping you?